I call to order the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025 at 3:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Palmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Here.
Vice Chair Browning.
Present.
Schweitzer.
Present.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we will move on to the approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, January 8th, 20. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Chair Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
By your vote, you've sustained the motion from the Alderman from the 6th to pass the minutes of Wednesday, January 8th, 2024. We will move to committee discussions and take up the rest of the agenda after we have item number 1, winter storms. This committee discussion is really because of the need for the city and the public to know more about each other's side of the story, and having Director Williams here today to speak on the city's efforts on the winter storm, as well as giving the public the opportunity to voice their concerns, share what they've been experiencing. So we'll begin with Director Williams coming up and sharing with us a brief presentation, and then we'll move through committee questions, and then we'll take public comment. Thank you, Director Williams, for being here. Please proceed. I think you guys turn your mic on. Oh, just gotta press the little button.
Testing, testing. There we go.
Thank you. Please proceed.
All righty. Well, first, thank you so much for this opportunity once again to come before you all, this time with the update on winter operations and the process of the Streets Department. As you stated, my name is Bethany Williams, Director of Streets for the City of St. Louis. Before I get started, I want to first thank our staff that has done a good job at keeping our arterial secondaries and working very hard on our residential routes currently as we are passing through this storm. So I want to make sure that it's on the record that I am grateful for them, and they continue to work very hard for the citizens of St. Louis every day. First, I want to move into the operations just to give a snapshot of what we're dealing with. The City of St. Louis has 4,230 lane miles, of which 1,920 of them are on snow routes. We currently have 52 routes that we service and 100 bridges. Now, I want to give a couple facts about this past storm, or this winter storm that we are currently in now. First and foremost, this started on January the 4th, and our crews have been at work at this for 11 days. As I stated in the first press conference before this started, we will continue to work until we can make sure that all roads are passable. We had a total of 50 plow trucks that worked this storm, with 53 employees that worked as well. The crews worked 12-hour shifts. Currently, they are on 8-hour shifts, on day shifts, doing the salting and continuing to treat the pavements. But they did start on 12-hour shifts. This storm, we saw on average 10.6 inches of snow, and you can see on an annual snowfall basis for the area what we accumulate in this city of St. Louis. So I want to go to the next slide, please. Alrighty, so let's talk about how do we prep for storms. So first and foremost, to kill the myth that we took salt out of the budget for FY25, that is not the case. What has happened here, we had, because of the mild winters we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, we had enough salt that we could operate this winter season. So it's not that it was taken out, those funds were reappropriated to other lines within the street maintenance budget. But we started this winter operations with 16,000 tons of salt, and that is located across the city of St. Louis. Our main salt dome is at 1900 Hampton, which you see here in the picture, as well as we have 2 other domes across the city so that we can service our communities on a faster basis. And I spoke about over the past 2 years, we have accumulated amount of salt that we made the decision to move those funds to other areas of needs within the street maintenance budget. Employees that work snow call. First and foremost, that is a duty that you sign up to work snow call. So everyone that works in the streets department is not on the snow call list. You sign up because there is additional incentive to work snow call. And so we have, like I said, 50 plus drivers that have signed up to work snow call. Although the streets department, refuse is part of the streets department as one of the divisions in which the streets department services, they do not drive our plow trucks on a regular basis. We do have some of those drivers that sign up to be on snowplow duty, but for the majority of the part, and honestly, this year, I don't think we have any, don't quote me on that, but I'll make sure, that have signed up to plow snow from the refuse division. What we do have in our refuse division, we have trucks that are assigned to refuse, and they go down the alleys salting to make sure that they are drivable and passable, or for our trucks to continue that service. I will talk more about trash operations later in the PowerPoint as well. Next slide, please. Want to talk about some of the routes. You always hear me talking about, and historically you've heard the director or whoever standing before you, the commissioner, talk about arterial, secondaries, hill routes, and residential streets. So just to give, there are some examples on the screen of arterial routes. Arterial routes are high-volume routes. They're normally connected to interstates, and they move you from one end of the city to the complete opposite end of the city, or they have some type of junction that will take you to the complete opposite end of the city. Secondary routes are mainly in your neighborhoods. These are the collector routes that will take you to the main arterial routes, which in turn takes you to interstates to get you through the city or through around the state as a whole. And your hill routes. Hill routes are identified by streets that have a incline or slope, and we know that those are not passable, so we prioritize those routes so that we can make sure that we treat them in the process. So let's talk about what is the main, how do we identify what do we plow in the order that we plow? Our main priority are our arterial routes. That's so that we can keep traffic moving across the city of St. Louis. When we look at Metro, we look at our hospitals, first responders. These are routes to make sure that those main thoroughfares are open at all times. Our secondary routes are our second priority, and then our hill routes fall in behind that. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see an interactive map. This map will give you all of the routes, primary, secondary routes across, as well as hill routes across the city of St. Louis. This map is very useful to myself and to my team. This is pretty much how we do our business off of coordinates and maps. So this map is extremely important to us and our drivers, as well as to the public, so that you can visit this map on our internet, on the website, and it will tell you what are residential routes, what are arterials and secondary routes. Next slide, please. Snow routes overview. So I just want, like I stated before, arterials, secondaries, and hill routes are our main priorities that we plow in that order every snowstorm. For example, the snowstorm that we currently had, it hit us on Friday the 4th, and it hit us again the following Friday. Our priorities go back to our arterials, secondary, hill routes, and then working with residentials. The city of St. Louis historically has never plowed residential streets and side streets. It is my understanding and doing my research that in the past we have attempted, but we know that with the number of cars that are parked all types of ways on the streets, the size of our equipment, it's impossible for us to get down some of these residential routes. In this storm, we took the opportunity to work with forestry, Parks and Forestry Division, and they have allowed us to utilize, and even their staff and their fleet, to go down some of these smaller streets, as well as they were able to help us in this storm of opening up some alleyways and ramps to interstates, things of that nature. They really were able to come on board and help us. So I think that's all part of the larger plan of what we're attempting to do when we have major storms here in the city of St. Louis. We've also worked with schools. It was brought to my attention that, the schools were not on snow routes, or no one was plowing around the schools. We had GIS maps created within a day, hours. I was able to get a map that pertained to all of our schools, and it overlaid with where our routes are. And so I was able to instruct the staff, if it was not on a snow route, this is where we need to make sure that we treat around this school. And so currently what we are doing, we're continuously working through that with schools to help them plow around their schools. Every day we're learning something new. My staff's brain is an engineering brain. We think about roads. And so it's important that we have conversations so that we know how schools prioritize bus pickup, parent drop-off, all of these different layers of how students get to school and staff get to school. So we are continuously working with that and working with the schools if they would, like assistance, and we're continuously salting around those schools as I speak now. Road treatment. Next slide, please. So want to talk about how do we treat our pavements. First and foremost, the type of treatment that we will start with depends on the weather, and depends on the storm. If it's raining, us pre-salting really makes no difference because the rain will wash it away. So normally we wait until we see about a little less than a half of inch of snow on the ground, so we have something to plow. And that is when we're moving into plowing our arterial roads. So and how do we look at those pavements? I think that's what's really important here and important for people to understand. When we talk about the street has been plowed, it's passable. And so in all of my interviews that I've given up until this point, I've spoken about lanes, or there's one lane open or the street is passable. That does not mean that you can see black pavement from curb to curb. That means that there is a passable lane that cars can travel in that space. And so when we look at how do we plow, our first round is to make sure that it's passable. During the snow, we just want to push as much of the snow as possible. And from there, we're wanting to make a passable lane. From there, once the snow stops, then that's when we really start pushing and making sure that we're getting as much of the snow off. In this last storm, that is when we really were able to start treating, because once the rain stopped, we were able to put treatment down, put salt down in order to help us activate and plow the primary and secondary streets. Next slide, thank you. So as for refuse, in the contract that we sign for them to work, they have rules that they work under. So if it's accumulated more than 6 inches of snow and the temperature is less than 10 degrees, drivers do not have to go out in the field. And so that's per their contract with their union. And so we try to make sure that we adhere to that, and the union makes sure that I adhere to that all times. In this last storm, we were able to collect 50% of the routes. The routes that we were not able to collect, we spent time on Saturday putting our salt trucks down the alleys so that we can, try to break up the snow, and so that we can make some of these routes passable, that we are able to collect the trash from those alleyways. I want to talk, next slide, thank you. Want to talk about next steps. You know, everyone is concerned, what do we do from here? How do we improve? And so I'm looking at this as on a larger scale. Yes, we did ask for ARPA dollars to look at how do we plow residential streets, and we've done just that. From the beginning, we looked at working with contractors. You know, it's an accountability piece. How much is it going to cost us on an ongoing basis in order to utilize contractors? Will we allow them to use our salt to treat our roads, or will we pay them for their salt and their service and their fleet? It was a lot of factors in there that just made it a little hard and unsafe for us, the liability for us as the city to move forward with some of these contractors. Because we all know, if you've seen any small contractor during a snowstorm, that's one of their major times where they're making money. And so they would have to be dedicated to the city of St. Louis and our residential streets in order for us to make sure that they're using our product on our streets and servicing our residents. So I want to look at updating and creating policies, ordinances around snow removal, period. So, you know, when we look at historically what policies we do have or ordinances we have, I think that they need to be updated. I think that we need to have I did find a resolution that spoke to plowing of resolution that spoke to plowing of residential streets. And so in that, it kind of give us some guidance on when and where and how we should plow. But I think this is something that we should educate the public on, making sure they know that if we're going to move in this direction of plowing residential streets, the expectation of how they should park their cars. If there will be any, you know, your car can be towed if it's not parked this close to the curb, as well as updating all of our signage across the city. So there's things internally that we need to do, as well as update our routes. As you can see here, our routes have not been updated since 2014. We have additional schools that we've added. We have additional neighborhoods and subdivisions that have been added to our city. Businesses have come. And so as we rebuild, it's important that we update and rebuild all of this as well with our city. What should residents do? You know, I ask that, you know, if you have an emergency situation, we understand the conditions of the pavement. We understand that there's ice all over the city. And I thank the residents that have put them in CSB so that my staff, that's how we operate as a department, is through CSB. And once you put something in CSB, our staffs can quickly identify and add those areas to the list. We are doing something that it's actually trial and error. It's over. We have staff that are going out now that are plowing residential streets, or excuse me, not plowing, they're salting residential streets that we can get our fleet down. There's so many factors that play into the fact of why we're not plowing residential streets at this time. And so we're doing everything in our power with the help of forestry, making sure that if we're not able to get down the street with our larger fleet, we are using some smaller fleet, at least where we can get down and salt the pavement or salt the ice and treat it until the sun comes up as well. In the midst of a storm, we ask that residents park extremely close to the curb or as close as possible to give us as much space. And even now, if you know, when we're coming home at night or in the afternoon, if you cannot park in your driveway or in your garage, we ask that you park as close as you can to the curb so that our staff has the room to do the work that they need to do. I think I will leave time for questions. That's all that I pre-prepared to present to you today based off the questions that were given to us.
Thank you, Director Williams. Thank you for that presentation. We received a lot of questions whenever I think any of us posted this on social media and just from our constituents over the last several days. So I appreciate that presentation and how many of the things that you touched upon. One of the things that has come up a lot is the treating and plowing of the side streets, and you mentioned that the city historically hasn't done that. but you've also said that there is some treatment of the side streets that happen. So what percentage, if you have any knowledge of, have been treated so far?
I cannot give you the exact percentage. So what our crews are doing now, so since Monday, they're back working 8-hour shifts, and that's all that they've been doing is driving around, identifying streets that they can at least back the truck up and salt the street. If they can't drop the plow, if you'll see some of our fleet, it will just have salt. It will not have the plow because they're able to get down without the plow on the truck. So I can get those quantities and actually tell you the number. Forestry has really kicked in within the last 2 days and given us even more of their fleet, that we're able to do even more. So I should be able to give you exact numbers. What we're dealing with now is per request. So if someone gives us a request in CSB, then we are taking those, or if they're calling, we're taking those requests, and that's where I'm channeling our crews to go and do that work. And then as they come out of that request, whatever areas around that, they're treating that as well.
I appreciate that. And one of the things that I feel like has happened simultaneously, and you touched on a little bit with the trash pickup, a lot of my constituents are reaching out about missed trash pickups. And I saw your part of the presentation where it said the degrees and the number of inches, but a lot of it just seems like they can't get down the side streets, especially for people who have roll carts. If they're not, if the alleys are being treated, there's no alleys there, it's just side streets. So can you speak a little bit to trash pickup?
Like I said, if they can't get to the trash, we will get back as soon as we can. Our main thing right now is, I know for sure, like alleys, dumpsters are overflowing, my dumpster's overflowing. And so because of that, we are continuously trying to salt the alleys and salt these hill routes that have roll carts or routes that do not have alleys. We're continuously trying to salt and treat those pavements so that we can get in there and get the trash.
Okay, so looking ahead with the forecast that we had for this sort of storm, where the forecast was calling for maybe even up to 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow, do you think that that should have triggered the city to do more pre-treating, or any sort of hindsight is 2020 moment from that?
No, I think the city reacted because we identified how the storm was moving. And so when I first started here, I talked about that's pretty much what dictates if we pre-treat and when we pre-treat. If you have an amount of rain that's coming in prior to the start of the storm, it will just wash your treatment away. And so you would still be stuck here in the same space where we are now because the treatment would have been washed away.
Okay. And do you think the salting of the roads and side streets with how much ice has accumulated, is that going to be sufficient to deal with the ice that has built up?
Every day we are continuously treating with the sun that's out. God has blessed us with the sun this week, and hopefully with increase in temperatures, and that salt treatment will start to activate. So as cars are driving down roads and you have that salt out there, it's our hope with the sun, the salt, the cars, it all activates together, and we will start seeing some of this, the sheets of ice in places, we will start seeing that breakdown.
Another question that came in, and you sort of addressed it just now, with the, we have a few days of temperatures that'll be in the 40s or maybe even the 50s, but then temps drop again. Do you anticipate that the treatment that's happening now will keep those roads from refreezing, or is there a plan in place for that?
So the treatment will not stop. That's temperature based that will cause the roads to refreeze. But what we are trying to do is open up. And what we don't want to do is create puddles of water that will freeze, and where our inlets will start to overflow because of the amount of water that we're seeing once the snow starts melting. But we do want to make sure that we're pushing it to the sidewalk, in the tree line, between the sidewalk and the curb line, so that it could melt there. So we're paying attention to the amount of chemical that we're putting down so make sure that we do not trigger any flooding.
Okay. You answered this. I'm just going through questions that I've received from constituents and online. There was a question about 2025 being the first year the cities have vehicles small enough to plow the side streets. Is that really just because the ARPA funds made it possible to purchase additional, and you're using other fleets, or?
No, so the fleet that we purchased with ARPA funds, they're not even here yet.
I
So
know,
due
I just
to-
mean that's going to be the first time in 2025,
So-
later this year.
Yes, so next snowstorm, probably like 2026, is when you will see them out on the road. It's our hope that we get them here within 2025, but it won't be this winter season.
Okay. It's not as simple as adding a snowplow to some of the trucks that we have. The
So we are
smaller
doing
kind
that
of,
now.
that's
So
what
that's what we're
forestry's
seeing
doing.
now. That's what forestry, as well as some of the smaller fleet within the street department, we're able, that we can outfit them with plows and spreaders for salt. That's what we're currently doing now.
Okay. I have one more question from questions constituents sent me regarding sidewalks, especially around, public-owned buildings, large apartment buildings. Obviously, it's the responsibility of the property owner. Can you speak to that?
I think you just answered the question in your question. It's their responsibility. Our staff is, and the streets department is not equipped to clear sidewalks and things of that nature. But we will work with, businesses or city buildings to provide, any help or assistance or guidance that we can give, but we mainly focus on the roadway.
Okay. I'll let my members of the committee ask questions. I know there's some other and online, but we'll start with the committee. Alderman Valmer, any questions?
Yeah. Hello, Director Williams. How are you today?
Mic on.
Having fun, aren't we?
Yes.
Mic on.
All right. Is there a plan? Because naturally I've received, it's on green,
Okay.
tons of things from, I have, I think, 5 public schools in my ward. And is there a plan that's already in place every time for snowstorm to be around these public schools? Because it seems like, is that on your priority list, even though many of these are side streets and they're not what you call the snow routes, but are they on the immediate plan or are they a secondary route?
So that is a discussion in future. How do we operate in these conditions moving forward? If I look at the existing plan, if it's on a snow route, yes. If no, we get to it when we get to it. And so I think this storm has allowed me to gather more information about, just like I was saying, buses may drop off on one side, parents pick up and drop off on a different side. So this gives us flexibility in how should we plow around these schools. I will say that within the last week, since I received the map with the schools and all of that, we have made it a priority to make sure we salt all the way around the school. So where I was thinking the front of the school is clear. If I didn't know that you don't use the front of your school, you use the back entrance or a side entrance, I had no way to direct the staff. So I think that this storm and opening this up will open a larger conversation with myself and public schools, private schools, in any school, so that we can figure out how do we move forward making that a priority.
All my calls were from the public schools, teachers, faculty, and some of the families, parents. And it is in regard to that they all do, like Betty Wheeler has, they use their parking lot to go through in and out because of the buses. The former Southwest High School, which CVPA is, uses Arsenal Avenue for their pickup. So these are the things that I guess should be maybe put into as you're putting this together. Get the pickup and drop off routes for these schools, and maybe that can be a priority to maybe help these schools, maintain, a level of students in them during these times.
Right, and so I've been working very closely with the mayor's office on identifying that information for me and sharing it with me so that we can continue to make those adjustments. But students in schooling is a priority that we will figure out how do we move forward with that.
All right. No, thank you very much. I know it's a untenable situation. We don't get these many that often. I've been alive for a long time, and we haven't had one of these in a long, long time. But thank you very much for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman Valmer. Alderwoman Keys? Alderwoman Keys?
Thank you. Sorry for the technical issues.
That's all right.
The same concerns that were raised by Balmer about the schools. I have 3 schools in my ward and received a ton of calls. But I do appreciate the work that is going on, and our major roads are clear. And we just need that help over on the side streets so that people can actually get back out. But great job overall. Great presentation. I really enjoyed watching the presentation and all the information you provided. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And like I said, we're continuously working on those side streets, residential routes.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Velasquez?
Thank you. Thank you, Director Williams. As Alderman Volmer said, I know this is a tough situation, and it is, untenable at times because we don't get that many ice storms like this. But just a few questions. I know you mentioned that you hope that between the salt and the sun that we're ready for the next band of cold weather. But it just seems like, can we have an aggressive plan to at least break down some of the ice on these hills and some? I mean, it is, I mean, you've seen, I mean, there are news stories out there. Literally, I've got a couple in my ward where they have an ice skating rink, and it's funny, but not funny all at once. And it just seems like we're only going to have a couple days to really, I mean, literally try and break down some of this ice.
So yes, we are internally the leadership. It's hard for me to pull them away, but because they're leading operations. But myself, Kent Flake, and Bob Gamache, who is our superintendent, are taking notes of all of this, and really will prioritize a little differently how we attack our snow routes, because I think our snow routes work. It's just how do we attack them? And maybe it's the order in which we're treating. We should look at how do we treat some of those pavements. So that is the plan. If another snowstorm, I hope not, this is it for the winter, but I doubt it. But if another one was to come, how do we attack with the current operations that we do have?
Right, but I think the issue, and I'm not a weather person, I think the issue is not the snow at this point. It's just that we have ice and it keeps on freezing, and we've got the temperatures are going to go up, but then they're going to get colder and we're still going to have ice. So I think, I mean, I've got some constituents here that live on my street. My street it's covered in ice. I'm surrounded by it. So I think that's everybody's fear and frustration, is that if it's not clear in a few days, we're going to be spending the next week walking on ice. So
we are continuously treating. We're going back over and over with the hope that we have enough chemical down with the sun, and we are paying attention to the weather, that it will all work together. If we can plow, we will start plowing again, but right now we're to the place of just ice, as you said. And so we're just trying to wait for that to break down. And like I said, we're continuously monitoring it. In some streets, it's only our trucks that are driving on this. And so it's important that we just keep going back. I had a driver call me last night and was like, I drove by the streets that I did earlier today and it just looks the same, but we just have to stay at it and keep salting, and then we will see, hopefully we will see change with the upcoming weather.
I have a couple questions since I have you here random questions from constituents, but can you plow on streets with speed humps?
That's why we have signage, so that we can see where the humps are, because if you can plow streets that have speed humps on them, that's why we have signs up there. Signage is for you as well, our residents and visitors to our city, but it's also for us when we oversized equipment and we can't see exactly what's ahead or it's covered. We're able to read the signs and know that it's a speed hump ahead.
That's yes. So I just want to, that's urban myth. Well, somebody will put it on the Facebook group that you can plow a street.
Yeah, you just have to know where they are, because we could plow it up.
We don't want that. And do you all have snow blowers?
Say that again?
Does the department have snow blowers?
Do we have snow blowers?
Uh-huh.
No, not the streets department.
And then I do have a request. If we do, and it's a question and a request, and I think you all know me, I'm a former, you can take the person out of communications whenever the communication's out of the person. I think it would be...
Alderwoman Velasquez, could you speak a little louder?
Sorry, I was joking. You can take the person out of communications, the communications out of the person. It would be, I think, helpful, and I'm curious if the next storm there is an ongoing communications plan with us, but really with the public. The reason I'm always asking is because I have a very engaged and vociferous ward that they want to know what's going on. So it's curious if there is a communications plan in your storm plan that we know and we accurately share that information with our public about what the plan is, what's happening, and I know there's the tiered system, but I mean, I know there's the basics of what's on the website, but obviously we needed more information than what was on the website this time around. So wondering if there is a communications plan or you're planning to have some more of that moving forward. And
So we currently have communications plan. If it needs to be updated or additional information needs to be shared, I really feel between the comms team and the mayor's office, we were on TV every day, if not every other day. We had press conferences to talk about. We continuously posted on our social media sites about the upcoming weather, as well as updated residents throughout the storm. So I'm not for sure how we can increase that, but I hear your comment, and we will look at how do we increase past that. But, I mean, we literally, every day, 5:30 in the morning, I was sitting doing press meetings. So, yeah, but we could look at, if you have other ideas of how we can share that information, I'm sure we can take that on.
I think, I mean, I'm open. I think particularly with the schools, I think everybody saw that. I received a lot of emails about that in particular, about just the conditions around the schools. But I'm happy to talk offline, or if hopefully we don't have more snowstorms or ice storms this session. But that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. So I appreciate the work that's been done. I think that city workers have been working really hard around the clock from what we hear. 12-hour shifts can't be easy. So, my gratitude goes out to those people who have volunteered for snow duty and the people who are going out there and doing that work, as well as to you for making, and as you said, doing press conferences and being out there trying to inform people. I think we can both acknowledge the amount of work that gets done, but also that there's improve. A lot of the streets that we see are, as we've mentioned, still covered in ice to the point where there's few spots where you can actually gain traction. The alleys are, I understand, difficult to take care of, and hopefully some of the smaller equipment can help. But without the alleys being safe, we can't get our trash picked up, and it kind of snowballs, excuse the pun there, but it snowballs into a situation where we have overflowing dumpsters. You mentioned that there are some ordinances that you thought needed to be updated. Anything in particular?
So when I say updated, I mean more of policy update, creating ordinances. The only resolution that I could find that speaks to residential plowing is the one that I referenced. I don't know the number of the resolution number, from maybe 15. So I'm not even for sure the year that the resolution came out, but it spoke to what happens when we have to plow on residential streets. So when I speak to how do we move forward in the future, maybe it's ordinances that we develop to speak to how do we operate, or not operation side, but this is what the law, like this is what's expected, this is what we expect from residents, and how to, that educational piece to share with residents on when we move to snow plowing, heavy snow plowing of residential routes. A lot of these routes too, you still have cars that are parked everywhere. So just imagine if I was to say, we're gonna snow plow all residentials tomorrow, and we don't inform the public about how they should park and where they should park. That could be an even larger issue for us as a city.
That's understandable. And so just to clarify for everyone today, where should people park when there's going to be heavy snowfall?
You should try to park in your driveways or in your garages if you have them. If not, as close to the curb as possible.
On a residential street?
On residential streets, we only plow, that's...
Well, what I mean is not on a snow route. Does the city prefer that people do not park on snow routes during storms? Okay, that's what I was trying to ask.
Okay.
So speaking of snow routes, though, I think we've all gotten a lot of emails from people concerned about the state of the streets, and I will often reply and send them that snow route map, which is a great map. It's a great tool. It's very interactive. You can zoom in and see exactly where the routes are. But it's surprising to a lot of people that they live on a snow often, and I think it's because there are not signs up on that snow route. Now, Alderman Cohn brought this up in the Rams hearing that we had yesterday, and I'm wondering what's being done to make sure that we have proper signage to allow people to know that they're on this route, so they don't have to go look up online before they park their car. And a secondary question to that is, what is going on with the city's sign shop? Why aren't we able to replace signs that we are losing or are going bad or disappearing?
So I'm not for sure if I mentioned it, but in one of these slides, we talk about updating snow routes, and signage on snow routes is one thing that we have to improve on as a city, as a department, however you want to put it, say it. We will update signs to identify snow routes. So that's that. That has to be done. Signs need to be updated across the city for snow routes. When you talk about the sign shop, 2 years ago now, our building flooded, 1900 Hampton flooded. And a lot of our sign equipment, if not all of our sign equipment, was lost in the flood. And during that time, we got a contract. We were able to get a contract to help us with sign printing and printing of signs so that we could stay on top of printing signs for the city. And so we found that in doing that, it was cheaper and it saved us money by going through the contract. So it's not that we do not produce signs anymore, it just takes longer for us to get them. Where before you all could call and someone could go in the sign shop, print out a sign. Now our warehouse is more of just a warehouse. We store the signs until it's time to put them out in the field.
Okay, I think I've been waiting for over a year for signs in my and there's parking districts that have been in place that we can't enforce because there's no signage. Some of that ordinances got passed over 2 years ago, and so while I'm sensitive to the flood that knocked out the sign shop, it feels like a city our size should be able to replace signs within a year. So if it takes longer than a year to order signs, I might humbly suggest that's not a good thing, even if it saves money, because you cannot have good roads without good signage.
Thank you for your comment.
Well, I'd like it to be a lot more than a comment. I'd like to hear a plan of action because I think it's unacceptable that we cannot replace signs in a city size. So I hope to hear that from the administration in the coming week. Moving on to sidewalks. Sidewalks, in my opinion, are just as important as streets. Is how people get around, especially in weather like this when they might not feel comfortable driving. They need to be able to walk places. Yet, I think most of the sidewalks in our city right now are impassable to the point that senior citizens and people with disabilities cannot leave their house to get groceries. What is the current ordinance regarding clearing of sidewalks? I understand that people are responsible for clearing their own sidewalks, but is there any enforcement mechanism for what happens when people don't clear those sidewalks?
I'm not familiar with, if there is, I'm sure, maybe an ordinance out there about sidewalks. The streets department mainly maintains the roads. I think as we look at turning to a Department of Transportation, these are things, and we pick up sidewalk maintenance and how do we maintain that. Those will be things that will happen in the future, but currently we mainly look at the roads.
Okay, yeah, I think that's got to be a focus. Specifically sidewalks, I think my colleague asked this question around public buildings. You mentioned that you do not have equipment to clear sidewalks around those.
So we do not clear. The streets department, I'm not for sure if other departments clear. Yeah, say it again. Oh, Parks and Forestry clears around buildings, our city buildings, but we do roads. That's what the streets department currently is responsible for.
Okay, and is what about buildings that are, say, managed by the St. Louis Housing Authority?
that's not under my jurisdiction.
Okay, I think that we've gotten some, I've gotten some emails that are especially around some of these publicly managed buildings and then even private property that isn't being cleared and without an enforcement mechanism. And, you know, I'm not trying to pick on the homeowner who can't get out and physically clear their sidewalk, but when a giant corporation has a building and they don't clear the sidewalks around it, and it's a block long building, that creates an entire block that's unnavigable. So I think that when we're looking at updating ordinances, that's something we might want to look at is how do we enforce that? Because it really just comes down to, again, affecting people's quality of life. You mentioned the contract for the refuse drivers. Can you repeat again what conditions they do not go out in?
They do not operate in degrees less than 10 degrees, when it's less than 10 degrees outside and 6 inches or more in snow.
Okay, that's helpful for people to know. So if you're waiting for your trash to get picked up, just know that might be a limiting factor. And I think my last question is just what if you are looking at the response to this snowstorm, what do you think could be the thing you'd like to see improved the next time we have a snow?
As I stated, I think we will put more emphasis on how we prioritize the streets within the route. So sometimes we may not just go down, because I'm sure our staff, they have their route and they just go from street to street to street. Maybe we look at how do we prioritize, you know, in the order in which we're doing the treatment of the pavement. I think that's the number one priority. My plan is to continue to work with schools to figure out how these access points so that we can develop a plan. How do we make sure that these streets are clear or passable, I would say, around these schools?
I appreciate that. I think schools do need to be the priority because kids need to get that education. They need to be able to get there safely. I also have noticed that some of the secondary routes, while they have been plowed and treated, the lanes are not what I would call passable. So if a route needs a second go around or some more attention, people can report that via CSB.
Sure, they can report it to CSB. If you have any concerns, that's where you should go, to CSB, and it will be put in the rotation. But I will say to you, none of our routes are just passed once. That's why we have different routes across the city, because that driver continuously rotates until the street is passable.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't have any more questions, but again, thank you for coming and thank you for all the response. I hope that we can get to a place where the roads are clear in the next few weeks so that people can get back to their daily lives.
Thank you, Vice Chair Browning. I know we have a few members of the board who aren't on the committee who did ask me if I could ask some questions. The most senior of those is Alderman Narayan. Alderman Narayan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Schweitzer, and thank you for holding this meeting. This is incredibly important. I just want to thank you. I know that I asked for you to have a hearing on this, and I want to thank you for having it so quickly after I asked. I also want to thank the director for being here, and again thank all the individuals who are actually out working to clear the streets and to salt the streets right now. That being said, I don't want to beat around the bush here. I think that the response to this, at least in the 4th Ward, has been an absolute failure. I think there's two reasons I can come to mind with that immediately show that. One is that 10 days after this storm, I'm still snowed in my house. I live on a hill route and I cannot go anywhere. I think the other thing that's indicative of the size of the failure here is that there's 104 attendees on a public infrastructure committee hearing. I heard the director say that we're looking at doing this per request. That's not a way to do things in a city this size when you're talking about a plowing route. I'll just put in a CSB request for every street in the city then. you still haven't touched hill routes, actual hill routes that are designated hill routes on the map in the fourth ward. I know because I live on one, I live at the end of one, and there hasn't been a truck that's gone by. We're talking about hill routes that have not been touched in, I mean, some of them now, I've heard from some residents that they're finally seeing a salt truck come through 8-9 days after the storm. And no one's asking for their residential streets on these hill routes to be plowed, but at the bare minimum, we need them salted. The city used to have big boxes of salt out so that people could salt these hill routes, even without the streets department necessarily having to do that. Director, can you tell me why we got rid of those boxes, or is that before your time?
That was before my time. I couldn't even tell you what you're speaking of.
Okay, yeah, there used to be.
Alderman had.
Alderman Ryan, as I guess the old guy down here, we used to have those around. The problem that they found out when it came time, they were usually filled with sand, but when it came time to use them, most of the neighbors had emptied them to use the sand for their own personal regards back in the 70s and 80s. So when it came time to use them, they were empty or usually full of trash. So they found out it was not a good thing to do.
That makes sense. But yeah, that being said, I mean, we just need these. If you look at that interactive map and you look at the fourth ward has more hill routes in it than I think the rest of the city combined. And the fact of the matter is that the city just did not do a good job on these hill routes. It continues to fail the residents on this. It's killing businesses right now. Business is down. Basically every business owner and restaurateur that I've talked to in the fourth ward says, yeah, well, people can't get here and they can't park. It's been all over the news how bad the streets in the city are. So people from the county aren't coming into the city right now. The amount of phone calls that I've gotten from people, phone calls and emails about people who have said, I don't know what I'm going to do about my groceries or my medicine. We're talking about 10 days. This is just an absolute failure. And I know that other places have seen, some the routes open up and that they don't have as many hill routes. But here where there are all these hill routes, it just, the job didn't get done. And I think to say anything less would just be gaslighting the general public. I'm hearing from nurses and first responders who can't make it into work. It's just an overall bad situation. And I normally, Director, I would encourage you to come to the fourth ward and look at it, but I'm asking you to not do that because the roads aren't passable. What I am asking for is for you to send trucks to salt these hill routes. I don't know how much clearer I can be. And thank you again for your time and for being here. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderman Narayan. Alderwoman Spencer, let me know she is on and would like to speak. Alderwoman Spencer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to echo gratitude for hosting this hearing so quickly to bring to light some of the issues. I have to agree with my colleagues here. This response has been really, really frustrating. Those of us, the alderpersons, while we are the legislative branch, we certainly do not have our own street department. We are not directing the flow of salt trucks and snow plows for our individual wards, but we certainly do feel and identify with the frustrations. I too cannot drive on my own street. It's not a hill route, but there are 3 inches of ice on it right now. I'm lucky that I do not have mobility challenges, but some of my neighbors do, and it's been heartbreaking to witness that. I want to point out as well, Director, that we don't need policies to be nimble. We have pickup trucks and other departments that can easily be equipped with salt distribution apparatuses. We can easily put on blades on the front end of heavy duty supervisor level pickup trucks. sidewalks to, do some light plowing. And there are lots of ways that we can utilize the other department personnel to supplement what streets is doing. I do not think that it's appropriate or necessary for the Board of Aldermen to legislate ways in which our departments can be nimble, should be nimble, and be able to accommodate unusual amounts of snow. I do recognize this is not a normal occurrence, but as a city who has $1 billion budget, we should be able to accommodate these things. And it's just been extremely, extremely difficult to navigate and field the large amounts of disappointment and not just disappointment, I would say safety hazards that are continuing to happen in our communities. And I just would really like to comment that, we should be coordinating with other departments to deploy as many resources as we possibly can citywide to try to make our streets safe again. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity here today.
Thank you, Alderman Sanye.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure, Director, please.
And I'm not for sure if the Alderwoman was on the call when I first started, but we are working with other departments, utilizing their smaller fleet so that we can get down some of these residential roads so that we can apply treatment to the ice that is there. So I just wanted to make sure we are working with other departments this time, currently, right now, as we speak, doing some of this work and assisting us with it.
Thank you, Director Williams. Alderman Sanye, I know you're here. I know we also have public speakers waiting, so if your questions have been answered, that's great. If not, please go ahead.
Thank you. I always start off with gratitude. Since there are folks who aren't working, I won't talk long, but I do want to acknowledge that I know that city workers are going hard. I know they are extending their shifts, and I know this is kind of unprecedented, and I know you've been very responsive to me and my reach out, so I just wanted to start off with gratitude. I think there's been a lot of conversations about the schools, but one of the other issues I've had a lot in the 7th is with elderly at the senior citizen homes, but also at service. Sorry. I was saying there's been a lot of conversations around schools, but I've also had a lot of outreach from citizen homes and from places that serve seniors, such as the 5-Star Senior or the Southside Wellness Center. Are there considerations of maybe being, and I know, they're different from schools, but, potentially putting them in, for example, the 5-Star Center, they give out meals every day, like over 300 meals to seniors, but they had a lot of trouble getting it out. Of course, I reached out to you, and I think we were able to get some folks to go out and clear it, but I just would like, as we're considering adding in schools, I think we should take a look at places that elders either reside or where they receive services, and also focus on those areas as well.
Thank you so much for that. And like you said, I thought that name rang a bell, but I wasn't for sure if we had serviced that area. But we have been working with seniors, senior buildings. We have some community volunteers that have talked to us about cleaning around senior buildings. On that map that I spoke of that they were able to print out for me, it has seniors printed on it as well. And so making sure that those areas are treated, at least, they're salted at this time, but that is part of the map that I was given some of, because when I saw the number, I was like, I'm sure there's more than this. So I'm not for sure if it's somewhere where their report, I don't know where they get the data, the information. I just need the map to do the service work. So, but that is something that's on that map, and we will continue to look at as well.
Thank you. And I think, I know I would be happy if I could see that map to respond and even give you a list of services. And I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I bet we would too, just to.
So I think that the map is coming from somewhere else, or the list is housed somewhere else. Okay, yeah, we can discuss that, but I don't have a problem sharing what I have. I just think that making sure everyone's on the list is very important, but it wouldn't start with me that's where I'm getting to.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Just doing the service work.
My other question is, and I'm no road expert, but I was just taking a look, and I know that we've discussed salting the streets, but are there discussions around like snow melters or machines that might allow staff to use to accelerate the melting process of ice?
We have not. I think when we look at streets for our magnitude, you know, we try to encourage staff to keep moving. That's part of the treatment process. They're rolling their tires on these different roads. If we had something that, I don't even know what that would look like, to melt pavement, an employee may have to sit there with it, something of that nature, but I'm not gonna say what we can't look into.
Yeah, I think it just might be a good point of discussion. Maybe you just target like school citizens or places where vulnerable people are, because I certainly understand we wouldn't probably have staff and capacity to use, you know, go and melt every street of ice, but maybe just targeting certain, you know, certain areas. And then my other question was, is there any, when workers are, you know, being mindful that they are working 12-hour shifts, and, you know, I've seen some of them, and I even took some cocoa, and I've had people email me and say they are trying to be nice when they see them working, but do they receive, is there anywhere in our budget that gives them hazard pay, or do you think there's anything we could do in our budgetary process that would help you to be able to incentivize employees to pick up those, you know, do that additional hard labor and do that additional work when there's climate, like extreme climate weather? Do you think, and I guess this might be a policy or a budget conversation, but it's something that I think might be good for us to talk about, and maybe even a line item in a budget that you could use to help reward our employees who are working hard and incentivize them to do that additional work?
So I did speak in the letter that I sent to you all. It talked about working with personnel on increasing their incentive pay that they get for plowing snow. So these employees sign up to plow snow, and then they receive incentive pay if it snows or if it doesn't snow. They are on call for a block of months throughout the winter, and they receive pay for being on that list. So when we have to call them, they come in to do the service. But I am currently, and even before winter started, how do we increase that incentive pay for these employees, as well as hopefully it will be incentive for more employees to sign up to be on snow duty as well.
Thank you. This is my last question, Chairwoman. I just promised this person that I would uplift what they brought up, and I know it might not fit universally for the city, but I wanted to raise it that there was someone who I had some communication with over email who's a father, and he just mentioned that in a city he's from, they have a policy where they essentially ban street parking when there's certain climate weather, I believe, and encourage residents to park elsewhere. And then once the snow plowing is complete, they allow the cars to return. And that it works well from his observation. So I did express that I don't think that would work everywhere, but maybe something for consideration as we're reevaluating snow routes, and especially, again, only for climate weather. But it might be a possible solution so that we wouldn't even have to worry about vehicles being on streets when we do begin that plowing.
That is when I speak to updating and creating ordinances, that's the piece that I'm really coming from. How do we instruct residents to park their cars? Where do we instruct them to park if they're able to park off of at least snow routes, if nothing?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll move on to public comment. We'll start with the people in the room. Director, you can take a seat. Thank you so much for that presentation. If everyone in the room has already signed up, if you haven't, make sure you do so. We will start with people in the room. For anyone who is signed up and is planning on speaking, can you please raise your right hand? Wonderful. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, okay. We have about 30 people, I believe, online as well, waiting to speak. So we're going to do 1.5 minutes per person. Madam Clerk will call people up, and she'll also let people know who is next. So the first person on the list is
Tim Dandridge, and the second person is Neil Gribb.
wonderful. Mr. Dandridge, come please approach. Make sure you say your name and the area of the city you live in, and you have 1.5 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jim Dandridge. I live in the Boulevard Heights neighborhood. Question for the street department lady here. If these workers, when it's 10 degrees or six inches.
Mr. Dandridge, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The way public comment has to work in our
Okay.
committees is you have to address the committee.
Okay.
There isn't a back and forth period,
Right.
unfortunately, but we'll make sure that any question is noted and that we get an answer for any public comment that's made. Please proceed.
Okay, I didn't know.
Oh,
So
tell ya.
if they don't work when it's below 10 degrees or 6 inches of snow, how long do they stay off? Till summertime? So then if the refuse department ain't picking up trash, why are we paying them if they're not coming to work? I haven't had trash pickup in my neighborhood for over 2 weeks. I don't know what they're doing. They're not doing anything with the snow and ice on my street. What should we do when we got 2 weeks of trash stacked up? Other vehicles come down my street, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, etc. I don't know why a city trash truck can't come down there. But I did see one get towed off a neighboring street yesterday, so I thought maybe they were actually doing something for a change. Just one suggestion, I mean, we got so much ice. Why not take a dump truck full of this salt stuff, or what do you want to call it, ice melt, dump it in a park in a pile, allow the residents to go there, maybe get 2 buckets of salt and spread in their own neighborhood to help everybody else out. And why not have a dumpster from City Refuge there so you can bring your trash? So you can bring your trash.
Finish his statement because I interrupted him.
If you can bring your trash and somewhere to drop it off. If you looked at my neighbors right now, everybody's trash cans are piled over the top.
Thank you for those comments. We'll make sure the questions, I get you the answers to your questions. I have your contact information, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please approach.
And Chris Gerber is after him.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes, Neil Gilb with 4th Ward, 44-year resident of the El Neal Neighborhood Association on Canterbury Avenue. I don't know where to start. Question I would have is, out of the 16 tons of salt, how much was used for this particular snowstorm, and how much do you anticipate will be left for the rest of the snowstorms, considering it's January and we're probably not going to get much between now and March. We may get another 1 or 2. The other thing is pre-treat. I did this in a microcosm on my sidewalk. I pre-treated because I knew it was going to be snow and then sleet, and I got out there with my snowblower as soon as it stopped the next morning, got it all cleared off. Now, if you see what's happening now, everything has just refrozen, and now you have a layer of ice. You can't even get through it. So that's a problem. Pre-treat. I think we all harken back to the days of Todd Walterman, where he said, we'll come down the side streets, we may clip a few mirrors, but we'll get your streets cleaned. I did not see any trucks out. I have not, since I've lived on Canterbury Avenue for 44 years, I never see any salt trucks out, plows or anything on our street. Our street is divided between Maplewood and St. Louis City. It's a gateway to Maplewood, and it's a gateway to St. Louis City. I think it should be moved up to at least a secondary route, because it's a hill route. We have another street called Esplanade, which is a very steep incline onto McCausland, and it never gets anything. I do want to say thank you to Alderman Narayan for the work he does in the 4th Ward and advocating for us. He's been great. One last comment, 2 last. The snow route signs need to be really big, not these little tiny ones.
Sure.
And then salt boxes. I'm in favor of salt boxes. Put cinder in them or whatever. We can get out there and do things ourselves.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
If you have any additional comments you'd like to leave with us, please do leave them in writing. We want to make sure everybody comes up. So next person.
Chad Hubbard and Emma Pines are the next 2.
Okay, I don't see them. And
Mike Chestnut and Mary.
I'm not sure. Will you repeat the name you had set read?
Mike Chestnut. Chad Hubbard and Emma Pines are the next 2.
Okay, so we'll have you come up because you're going here, and then we'll move to you. Please proceed.
My name is Mike Chestnut, as I said, and I've called Channel 2 last night and had a suggestion, and he says, well, if you better raise your taxes, and I said, I got a better solution. He goes, what's that? And I told him what it was. He goes, tell your alderman. And I left the message for somebody, and I don't know what ward I'm in, and so I left the message. The solution is let private companies plow them. They do a wonderful job compared to the city. They plow the mall street, the stores, etc. And I live in the apartment building and they've got the parking lot plowed real good, but not the street. I live at Forest Park Avenue in Newstead. The back street is Laclede, and you cannot get up Laclede, whether it's from Newstead to Boyle or Newstead down to Taylor. And Newstead to Taylor is even worse the next block, and I don't live in it. It's just aggravating, like the alderman said, you can't even walk, and I can't even hardly walk because I don't have toes on a foot, and it's just aggravating. And I figured that they would say, well, we can't do that. And I thought, well, it's not that you can, it's that you won't or don't want to. But you can let private companies compete. You do it all the time. If the union won't let city people plow the streets, let the private companies do it. The alleys in the streets, it'll be done a whole lot faster and better, believe me. And it won't cost the taxpayer so much.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, my name is Chad Hubert. I have a business in the 3rd Ward, and currently, since Monday night, Chippewa both directions has been closed just east of South Grand. And so the detour actually takes them down Keokuk, and then they want them to take a left on Louisiana. And so Keokuk is not a snow route. And so it's just straight ice. And then actually the intersection of Louisiana and Keokuk is part of the street calming measures. So there's no stop sign along Louisiana. And so everyone coming down the hill on Keokuk, when I went down last night, I had a hard time stopping because of the ice, because it's a hill. So I actually moved the detour route up a street to Arkansas because it's shorter, and so they wouldn't hit our bakery there on the corner. And so, yeah, I guess my comment would be that anytime there's a permit to close a street like that, for it to take into consideration, if it is a snow route, whether or not the detour route is clear.
Thank you. Very, very good comment.
Our next speaker is, she's Emma Pines.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Emma Prince, and I live in the Shaw neighborhood. I'm sorry. So I feel like a lot of the things that I've heard today, what we've talked about, are residential streets that are not snow routes. I live on Thurman, and Thurman has 5 inches of ice on it, and it is a secondary snow route. And so I think that the basic work isn't done. 39th was cleared over the weekend after a local news station came down and talked about ice is plain and fancy. And so I think we're kind of getting away from just the fact that the basic work on our snow routes that have been designated aren't done.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment.
The next speaker is Mary Bethker and Sarah Schaefer.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Beth Carr, and in all recognition here, I do work for the city, but I am here off duty as a citizen. And I first want to just thank the street department. I do know they're working really hard. My 2 questions are, is there a disaster plan with the street department? Because if you ask me what just happened, if we had 2/3 of our year total of snow happen within 7 days, a disaster plan should have happened. Like with the police department, they have code 1200. Everybody goes on 12 hours, and then we have to turn around and say, when we're done, when it's safe for the city. That's what happens in the police. I'm sure the firemen also have something similar if there's a disaster. This is a disaster. So to hear that we already went back to 8 hours versus 12 hours, I get it. People are weary, but there are people that cannot get out. Today and yesterday both, I almost crashed my vehicle on Oletha, and I was actually saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is it. So it is nightmare when I also have college-age drivers in the family. My son just said, just go down Oletha, Mom, and pray. Second question that I have is about subcontracting. I think I heard maybe we can't use subcontractors, or not really sure. I can guarantee you that the city of St. Louis does use subcontractors when the help is not there and not plentiful. I know we have electricians, plumbers.
Oh, man. That is time, and I think your comment is well made in terms of subcontractors. Thank you. That was very loud. Please come up. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Sarah Schaefer. I live in Holly Hills. with Miss Ann. She's my Alderwoman. My biggest question is, as far as these snow routes and everything go, we've had issues in our neighborhood also. However, I'm only 1 block away from a main street, so for me, it has not been an issue. I do have some family members that do work with the city. One of them actually has a pretty, both of them actually have a pretty important role with the city. With the refuse division, it has been noted that their trucks, their take-home vehicles, none of them have plows on them, and none of them have the salt dispensers on the back. That would be something that would benefit all of the supervisors that are driving around checking on the routes and checking on different things. My spouse, for example, he's a supervisor with refuse. That's one of his things that he's complained about. Why don't I have this on my truck? Why am I going in alleys, putting people's trash into my truck and then taking it down to South Refuse? To me, it doesn't make any sense. It's in the budget. What are they doing with the money?
Thank you for your comments.
Sonia Wagner.
Hi, I am Sonia Wagner, and I live in the 2nd Ward. I live close to Riverview.
Go ahead.
Riverview is clear. However, the neighborhood in itself, I don't have to go to Riverview to get out, but because all the side streets surrounding me are covered in ice, that's the main street that I go to. However, it surprises me that it's saying that the director said that people volunteer for the snow route. Why is there not a department that actually just handles the snow route? She said people volunteer. What if you don't get enough volunteers to plow the snow? Then who plows the snow? Also, I do like her recommendation because they do have ordinances in my area to clean the street. So if you have an ordinance to clean the street the first Friday of every month, then surely there is something that you can work out as far as an ordinance, as far as getting the streets plowed. And at this point, it would have just been helpful for just the salt. We didn't get anything. There's been no salt laid down, and I feel like that would have helped with the traffic coming through, and it may have melted it, crushed. It's not even slush, it's just still ice. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
And we have 11 speakers online.
Wonderful. If everyone online could please turn their camera on and raise their right hand. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Just nod, give me an indication. Wonderful. Thank you. Madam Clerk will announce the speakers. And again, we should have time to do 1.5 minutes each. We do have a 5 p.m. meeting starting, but please proceed, Madam Clerk.
I have Sarah Lyon-Schmidt.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I live in the Grand Arts Center area in the 11th Ward. I am concerned about parts of the roads that I think are not getting a lot of attention, and that is the areas by bus stops. I personally take the bus every week to Siteman Cancer Center for treatment. And a number of my neighbors with disabilities are also using this bus line, and it's so important. Today on each, both on my trip to Siteman and back, as people were exiting the bus, they fell and got hurt. And that's because the areas in front of the bus stops, still on the street. I understand we don't want to get into all of the talk about sidewalks and all of that, but on the street in front of the bus stops, the snow has been plowed over to block them, and people certainly can't get through with mobility devices. But also, you're climbing over 3 feet of snow where it's been plowed in order to try to reach the bus. And it's just causing a lot of safety problems for people with, for plenty of people, not just people with disabilities, but especially for them. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Our next speaker is?
It's Duygu Özpolat.
Yes.
I'll save you. Yeah, so I live in Dogtown in Fort Worth, and I am a little disappointed that we didn't get to hear any kind of answer to what our alderman really nicely addressed, that we actually did not get any treatment in Dogtown in the hill routes. So this is one of the as a part of the presentation, the director showed that, you know, these hill routes are supposed to be the tertiary, third priority, but I don't think any of us got any kind of, you know, salt treatment or plowing, and it's been terrible. So I would really like to have some sort of an answer to this. Has there been anything actually done? And if it has been done, it clearly isn't working. It's really still very dangerous. So we really need to revise the plan and think about approaching this differently in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure that questions that are asked during public comment are sent and answers are gotten and shared. So thank you for that. Next speaker.
Abigail English.
Hi, my name is Abigail English. I'm from the Tower Grove community. I am located on a hill route, so, you know, I kind of expected to be one of the last to be touched on the roads, but, you know, we're still out here sitting in a whole bunch of snow and ice. So just wanted to kind of reiterate, like, the signage. I know that was brought up earlier. I know before the storm, I kind of looked around, like, you know, is this a snow route? Previous cities I've lived in, it was kind of something I looked at. So, you know, if that's something that needs to be put in place, like, I'm happy to try to find somewhere else to put my car, or, you know, pop the curb or something if I need to. You know, if those plows aren't able to get down my street, it's just, I haven't been able to really get out of my street because it's narrow and nothing's been touched, and I'm kind of tucked back into the neighborhood where nothing else has really been messed with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Porchout.
Looking for a Miss Sarah online.
Okay, I'll go to the next person.
We'll move to the next one.
Meg.
Sarah, go ahead. Please
Hi,
proceed.
I don't know if that's me or not.
That's you.
I didn't. Okay. I mean, I don't want to take up time because I don't want to repeat everything. But my question is, where are the trucks? Like, is there any? I live in Southwest Garden. My brother lives in Shaw. I have friends and family all over the city, and not one of us has seen a truck. And I understand plows being too large for the streets, although I don't really, because I've lived in other cities and that's never been the case. But they're not too small for salt trucks, and they're not too small for salt. And I just don't know a single person who's seen one. And like I said, I know people all over the city, and it's just incredibly frustrating. And I have not been able, I'm lucky I can work from home, but I have only left to get groceries twice. It's day 10. Like, how have I not seen a salt truck? Also, the answer when the question has come up about pre-treating was that rain washes salt away. Well, there was not rain. There was ice. There was sleet. There was not water washing through the streets. I salted my sidewalk and my front walk. I shoveled. My husband shoveled again. It's completely clear. So there's somebody earlier who said that he had his little microcosm. That's how I feel. Like, it works. The salt it works. But it's just, the lack of response, I think, is really alarming. And it does make me wonder about an emergency plan and, you know, what would happen right now if something, you know, God forbid we needed emergency vehicles for some reason. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. If you could make sure to get the clerk your last name as well for our records, that would be helpful. Next speaker, Madam Clerk.
Meg Geiger.
Hi, my name is Meg, and I am a resident of the 4th Ward in Lindenwood Park. I'm also the proud parent of a St. Louis Public School student who attends Wilkinson in Dogtown, and just wanted to reiterate, the hill routes have not been touched. I have slid down Prather every day this week. It's terrifying when I have my 3-year-old in the car with me, and I'm just looking at these other cars like, here I come. I laugh because it just makes me, it keeps me from crying. I just would really like, when I saw in your presentation, Director, that you are asking our schools that are already stretched so thin to take care of these streets by themselves. I just think that's completely unacceptable. I would ask that you would at least, I understand that you are the roads department and you can't touch sidewalks, but can you deliver salt to the schools so they can salt their sidewalks? Our babies are falling, just trying to get to school, which they're mandated to attend. You know, at a certain age, kids cannot be truant from school. And it's just, we are not given safe access for our children to attend these schools. I do want to thank my alderman for calling this meeting. I also want to thank the alderman who spoke earlier, who called to attention the plight of our residents with disabilities. I think we often forget them, and especially in these emergency situations, they are our most vulnerable. And again, like the students who have to get to school for meals, for, you know, services outlined in an IEP,
Meg, that's your
they
time.
need safe access. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Geiger. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Father Bowen.
Hey, thank you. My name is Father Brent Bowen. I live in the 7th Ward at St. Dominic Priory. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to give my comments. I add my thanks to the men and women on the street department for their long hours, but as others have said, I think we can acknowledge their efforts while also being realistic about the shortcomings here. Since I only have a short time to speak, I'll just get straight to the point. It is time for the city to consider changing its policy on not plowing side streets. While I recognize that there would be logistical and financial challenges involved with that change of policy, I think we can all agree that the fallout of the current policy is disastrous. You're hearing it from all of these comments. Our public schools were closed for 3 days last week. Some of them switched to e-learning for a 4th day. Businesses are suffering. People are stuck at home. They have to take time off from work. And the people who are most impacted by this are those who are economically disadvantaged. Some people can't afford to take time off from work. So we can talk about tweaking the policy or small fixes here and there, but it's not going to fix these issues. The policy isn't working. It isn't suitable anymore. So I just want to encourage the Board of Aldermen to explore other policy options. Certainly, we can't be the only municipality that has narrow streets and lots of cars. Other cities have managed to do it and do it safely. So my hope is that we can find a solution that keeps our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Jay.
Can you say the name again, Madam Clerk?
Jay.
Is there a J?
Could you please
You unmute yourself, sir. Just say your full name and begin your comments.
Yes, my name is Jason Heidelberg. I live in the 1st Ward.
What's your last name?
Here.
I'm sorry.
We have a hill on Mott that is treacherous. I have a truck slid down and very, very treacherous. A lot of the side roads over here have not been touched by the city. Also, another thing that I want to talk about as well is the signs. So the signs, our inmates that is in prison make our license plates. Why can't they do the signs? You guys want to pay for them? They're there for a reason. Let them make signs. I know people that's incarcerated and they're my friends, but they talk about this all the time. Let's help the system, you know. But my thing is the whole situation with these streets. These streets are very treacherous. What about our first responders coming up to fires? Alderwoman Schweitzer, you know, several fires in our ward. So that is what I'm talking about. We got firefighters showing up to a scene on roads. What are they going to do? Slide? you know, that is very, very big issue. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk?
Nicole Hairline.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Herline, and I live in the Clifton Heights part of Alderman Narayan's 4th Ward. I can corroborate that we have also not seen a plow or salt truck since the first storm. We are a hill route, and we are also the 3rd highest point in the city of St. Louis. These past 2 weeks, my neighbors and I have pushed out a number of stuck vehicles. We also had a city schools bus get stuck on our street for a couple of minutes this past Monday. 10 of us able-bodied folks took it upon ourselves this past Saturday to shovel the street to get it somewhat cleared. We still have lots of ice and snow. I am stuck in my house. With the warmer temps this week, could we get some plows to clear the melting snow and ice around the city and the places that have not been touched?
Thank you so much for that comment, Madam Clerk.
Nancy Williams.
Hi, Nancy Williams, Ward 4. I bought my house in St. Louis City in 1974, where I raised 3 kids and 6 grandkids. So I have a history with this city. I live on a hill route. The 6,400 and 6,500 blocks of Nashville Avenue are completely impassable. They're sheets of ice, as is the cross street Louisville. Somebody knocked on my door today because they were looking for the owner of a car. Turns out it wasn't mine, but that they slid into, and this is a flat street. It's untenable. I called the Citizens Service Bureau, and because they haven't picked up my trash either, and I was given a number, and I called back the next day to check and see, well, nothing happened. And they said that they were backlogged, not to expect any help for several days because they were short-staffed. So calling that number doesn't work. The lady there was thoroughly stressed. I think she wanted to help me, but couldn't because the city is short-staffed. The only thing she could do was pass along my concerns. If we are understaffed, I think that the city in general has a problem with being understaffed. I don't think that we have competitive wages. I looked on the website, and what we're offering people for snowplows is way below the going rate. And it requires 2 years of training. So somebody is going to work for a landscaping company and make $40 an hour and get 2 years experience and then come and work for the city for half that. I don't think so. We really need to address our employment issues and pay our employees who are working very, very hard a living wage. And we need to invest in training people so that they have the training. I don't want somebody untrained driving a snowplow, but we need to invest in training people. We need to invest in our city and in our city workforce. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison Hamilton.
Hi, I also live in the 4th Ward on a hill route, and as stated here, those have not been cleared. I think it's important, we talked about changing plans moving forward, but I think it's important to note that the plan right now has not been executed. And as someone stated earlier, we've gone down to 8-hour days before the plan has been executed. And while I understand and appreciate that our snowplowers have worked hard and are tired, I think that speaks to the understaffing issue at play here. The job is not done, and we need to move forward and clear out the ice on these hill routes because it's incredibly dangerous.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Porchot.
You're muted.
She's having technical difficulties. She's not muted.
Oh, she's not muted. She's having technical difficulties. Well, as you work that out, we'll move to our next. Madam Clerk, how many more people do we have? I am cognizant that we have a 5 p.m. meeting that we are supposed to be starting.
Am I unmuted now? Am I unmuted now?
Please proceed, sure.
Okay. I apologize for that. So I want to thank everyone for this information. This is great. My name is Sarah Porchot, and I live in Benton Park, which is Ward 8. I do live on a side street, which we all know is not plowed. Totally understand that. However, with the partial melting we had last weekend, our street is now a sheet of ice, and we have not had any salt trucks come down. I just want to make sure I'm conveying the correct information to my neighbors, because I am the block captain, so I am the person kind of in charge of disseminating information. Should I have everyone put in a CSB ticket, because we're having 3 more days of above freezing temperatures, and I want to utilize those days, maybe hopefully with salt, and getting our street not being a sheet of ice? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I do think putting in the Citizen Service Bureau request is the right call at this time. Is that our last person we had
Our next
signed up?
speaker is Alana Duggan.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Let me get my video going. Hi, thank you. I also want to thank, big shout out to Alderman Narayan for sticking up for the 4th Ward, Dogtown, was where I live. I have a few quick statements and observations and one big questions. Respectfully, the roads didn't shrink overnight. I live in a century home, and the streets have been small. Someone already commented, other cities do it. Let's figure it out. It didn't happen overnight. And also respectfully, on social media, please stop saying how much salt you have. That is literally pouring salt in the wounds of these folks that are living on hill routes, have fallen, have crashed. It's not a bragging point at this point, because you're not using it. And respectfully, stop talking about historically. This doesn't happen. We don't historically get earthquakes, but if it happens, I doubt we're going to be ready for that. So history, why are we living in the past? Let's move forward and get some plans in place. Also, this is kind of, a little sarcastic, but not. Listen to the forecast. Rain was not in the forecast. They forecasted it for 2 weeks. FYI, snow melts, it turns to ice.
I'm sorry.
Another big thing.
That's your time, Ms. Duggan.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Erica Theron.
And is this our last person who had their hand up originally?
I'm sorry?
Is this our last person, Madam Clerk, that had their hand up originally?
Is Erica Theron.
Yes. Please proceed, ma'am.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'll make this quick. My name is Erica. I live in McKinley Heights. I feel like we have lost all concern for sidewalks and pedestrians. Somebody did mention bus stops, but I'm concerned because I saw a lot of children standing in the street trying to get to school, waiting for their buses in the mornings. And I wish we could focus some of our energy at least on clearing sidewalks along some of the snow routes, the bigger streets like Jefferson and Chippewa and things like that. I think we're day 10 into this, and I saw people this morning standing on a sheet of ice on Jefferson waiting for the bus, and a lot of bus riders are already, disenfranchised and at a disadvantage. And it would just be nice if we could focus some of our efforts on maybe having some of the large multi-million-dollar businesses like Schnucks maybe clear some of the snow on the sidewalks around the perimeter of the parking lot. A lot of the businesses are clearing their parking lots, but they're not clearing the sidewalks around the parking lots. And I guess that's my concern. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And I know that since we had the public comment open, more people online have raised their hands. We've unfortunately run out of time for this hearing today, because there is another public hearing immediately following this meeting. Immediately following this hearing, and so we'll have to move on to that. If you are online and did have a further comment that you don't believe was stated, please do send the comment to boa-clerk@stlewis-mo.gov. We really do want to hear from you. We were writing down your questions as you were bringing them up, so we'll make sure to pass them along to the appropriate department so we can make sure that everyone who had a question in the comments, that we get your question and make that information public as soon as possible. We have a lot more on our agenda today, but we will not be able to get to it. So those items, we will be rescheduling those board bills and the other committee discussion agenda for the Public Infrastructure Committee to later. I do want to just thank the Director Bethany Williams for coming and speaking, and everyone who took the time to be here today. And with that, we will move on to the end of our agenda, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been a motion to adjourn by the Alderman from the 5th Ward, second by the Alderman from the 9th, Alderman from the 5th, called for previous roll. Any objection? Any discussion? Hearing none, we are adjourned.